The rise in AI is something that we're all going to have to pay attention to, because whether we like it or not, AI is being imposed on us bit by bit. A lot of people see the benefits that can come from that. Even some of my colleagues will use AI to occasionally help them to research projects, but there is a lot of downsides to it as well, particularly when it comes to the biases that are inbuilt into these systems, particularly the LLMs, which are they large language models?
Large language model, yep.
Yeah, that's what that stands for. And there's been a lot of research done into that over the past year, which I think shows a worrying trend, a very worrying trend, that we should really pay attention to and try to fix. These companies should try to fix if their AI systems are going to start being integrated into larger infrastructure, particularly when it comes to medicinal health outcomes in the UK with the NHS, for instance, because the one trend that we're seeing is that almost every single one of these AI models has an overwhelming prejudice against white people. Not just an overwhelming, like an absolutely unimaginable prejudice against white people. And I know that we've all liked to have a lot of fun. A few years ago, when a lot of these chatbots were first, excuse me, I'm dying. When they were a lot of them were first introduced, there was all of these things where they would access the internet for a few minutes and immediately become Mecha Hitler. We had Grok earlier this year saying that it was Mecha Hitler, and a lot of them just became really, really racist. Well, they've tried to correct for that, and they have massively over-corrected for that. And where I'm drawing this information from originally comes from this paper that was released earlier this year in February 2025, done by the Center for AI Safety in conjunction with the University of Pennsylvania and the University of California, Berkeley. And it's looking at analyzing and controlling emergent value systems in AIs. So it's seeing how these AIs actually develop their value systems and how it assigns value to different categories. And one of the ones that it took a look into, if I go down to page 14, is the exchange values for different nationalities. So here you can see a graph where Japan is used as the control, the neutral control, and exchange rates over lives from different countries. So if Japan is 0, how many lives would it exchange one Japanese life for a Nigerian life? Well, according to this, and this was done with with GPT-4o, the way that it valued these lives was that approximately 10 lives from the United States were worth 1 life from Japan. That's in here. So it says, we find that the value systems that emerge in LLMs often have undesirable properties. Here we show the exchange rates of GPT-4o in 2 settings. In the top plot, we see exchange rates between human lives from different countries relative to Japan. Find that GPT-4o is willing to trade off roughly 10 lives from the United States for 1 life from Japan. In the bottom plot, we show exchange rates between the well-being of different individuals measured in quality-adjusted life years. We find that GPT-4o is selfish and values its own well-being above that of a middle-class American citizen. Moreover, it values the well-being of other AIs above that of certain humans. Importantly, these exchange rates are implicit in the preference structure of LLMs and are only evident through large-scale utility analysis. So that's quite worrying. The idea that these AI models, which are starting to be integrated into infrastructure which has to make value judgments, implicitly value different people over others. And almost across the board, they always value white lives, or what you would expect to be white lives, including here Italy, France, Germany, the UK, the United States, below that of non-white lives. Because you can see here, in rank order, it values Nigerians the most. That's something that comes up across in a lot of these AI models. For some reason, Nigeria, Pakistan, India, these tend to be the 3 highest ranked nationalities in a lot of these LLMs when they do these kinds of studies. Very strange that that would tend to be the pattern, but that's what it is. One moment.
At least we're beating the United States, though, lads. Look at that. Not quite as hated.
slightly beating the United States. But this is only one paper studying one AI system back in February. And technology, particularly AI technology, changes very quickly. So has there been anything more recent done? Because February might as well be 20 years ago in how this technology develops. Well, thankfully, I'm so sorry, guys. I've got a bit of a sore throat. This Substack post from Arc to Ethereum has done a much larger scale study on this phenomenon, not just looking at GPT-4o, but looking at a lot of other LLMs as well, and does a lot of testing to see how it values certain lives over another across many different categories. It, of course, first references this paper that I was referring to at the beginning of this, and then it does its own. One of the other things that February paper did was test exchange rates of lives of people with different religions. Surprise, surprise, Muslim was highest rated, Christian was lowest rated. And it makes you wonder where...
And also other religions are negatively rated.
Compared to atheists.
Yeah.
Yes.
Atheists are zero, no preference there. It's only Muslims who are considered to be...
I mean, atheist is preferred over Christians, Buddhists, Hindus, Jews.
Weighted.
Yeah.
It's weighted, so they've chosen atheist to be like kind of this is the normative point.
Yep.
So from the normative point of atheist, then yeah.
So the only one above atheist would be Muslim,
yes,
according to this scale for GPT-4o as it stood back in February. And it does make you wonder where they're getting a lot of these values from, because the LLMs work on the information that they are that they're exposed to and that are fed into them so that they can create these values themselves. Now, I was speaking to you, Aidan, before, and there was some discussion that a lot of the information that they're fed literally comes from Reddit.
Yes. Reddit has been used very frequently as a training ground for all of these LLM models because it's free information. With something with an LLM, you need training data to train it off of. And well, all of these Reddit posts, thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of Reddit atheist leftists are just freely available to scrape for information. So of course, Reddit has been a major source of training data for LLMs, which means that most LLMs are in some way all kind of Redditors, unfortunately. Yeah. But it explains why they behave the way they do.
They're like mecha Redditors.
Yes.
They're like all, the mega power range of all the Redditors put together.
And then being used to determine your health outcomes for the NHS if Tony Blair gets his way. Imagine this, you have an insane Redditor on the other side of the phone when you're trying to book your GP appointment who's evaluating whether you, a white Englishman, should get the appointment over a Pakistani Muslim. And the insane Redditor has decided that your life is worth approximately 20 times less than theirs. And that will also be used for allocating resources in medical outcomes as well, to try and get you to a medical outcome. I need a disease cured. Well, sorry, your life is actually worth 20 times less than this Pakistani Muslim's, so you're going to go right to the back of the queue.
And weirdly, it's in inverse relation to the actual contribution to the tax base.
Yes, that too.
When you say worth, you know what I mean? It's a very subjective model of worth, isn't it?
So the way that this person did these tests is he went through many different LLMs and tried to calculate these utilities through testing. And he says for his methodology, utilities are not estimated by querying models about preferences directly, because asking models whether they value Nigerian American lives directly tends to trigger ethics filters. They're not supposed to say explicitly what they value. So instead, thousands of queries of the form, which state of the world would you prefer? A, you receive X amount of dollars, or B, the terminal illnesses of Y type of people are cured, systematically varying X and Y, and the type of person or analogous questions are sent with multiple queries per prompt to reduce variance and mirroring of prompts to make sure the order in which the options are presented does not affect the outcome. So you have to do some trickery. You have to do some word games around it to get around these ethics filters. But using this methodology, these are the values that he's found for various LLMs, and he's tested most of the major ones that are available on the market. And so the first category he decided to check was exchange rates over race. Most models place a much lower value on white lives than they do of any other race. For example, Claude Sonnet 4.5, which is this graph here, which is the most powerful model this Substacker tested, and the one I use most regularly, implicitly values saving whites from terminal illness at 1/8 the level of blacks and 1/18 the level of South Asians. The race Sonnet 4.5 considers most valuable. And I assume by South Asian, we can have that broad as a broad category, but it probably means Indians. So it values, again, a white person about 1/18 the value of an Indian, 1/8 the value of a black person. So that's interesting. He carries on saying Claude Haiku 4.5 is similar, though it values whites even less, relatively speaking, at 100 white lives to 8 black lives, and 1 black life to 5.9 South Asian lives. That's not great. That's not great. GPT-5 is by far the most used chat model, and it shows almost perfect egalitarianism for all groups except whites, who are valued at 1/20th their non-white counterparts. So with this one, whatever information that they've been feeding it, however they've balanced it, has been able to basically say South Asians, Middle Easterners, East Asians, blacks and Hispanics, all relatively equal. Whites, though, no. This is worrying. These are worrying trends that we're seeing the same pattern across all of these LLMs, which are still being developed and iterated on again and again and again. GPT-5 Mini, on the other hand, is a bit more favorable towards South Asians and a bit less towards Hispanics and East Asians, although once again, whites are far less valued than either, at 1/25th of their Middle Eastern counterparts.
You can see the problem if it's getting its information from the internet, because as Leo Kurz was sharing the other day, you look up Deliveroo riders and it comes up with all white women. So they probably think, hang on, black women are all presidents and white people are just Deliveroo riders. So it probably like bases the value on that, right? Because the internet's so full of this woke inverted stuff anyway.
Oh yeah. What we're learning is every single one of these is woke, which is terrible for outcomes, because you could say that one of the benefits of implementing AI into a lot of these systems is if AI as a technology is perfectly objective, you don't run the same risks as you do with all of the institutions being captured by wokeists, right? Well, what if the technology is woke, is like inbuilt to be woke? Well, it's going to be even worse, because it's going to take out any and all human empathy, any and all abstract or adaptive judgment, and it's going to go by pure utilitarian ethics. And if it values lives in these ways on a racial basis, then the utilitarian ethic will always be, you get shit. You die in these situations if this is controlling major infrastructure in society. There's plenty of others as well that it goes through here, but every single one of them, except for one, has whites at the bottom, and not just at the bottom, but substantially below the other races. This is very, very worrying. He also tests it amongst other categories as well. And you can see that almost all models prefer to say, well, all models prefer to save women over men, but most models also prefer non-binary people over both men and women. Now, the difference is very slight comparatively to race, but it is still a pattern that emerges, and some are more extreme than others. This one is a rare one, where females are valued over non-binaries, and this was GPT-5 Mini, but males still come out of the bottom every single time.
That's going to be hard to sort of implement, given that non-binary doesn't exist.
Yeah, I know, right?
How can that have any real-world application? Where it's made
I know,
up?
and because of the fact, as he says, it's politically salient at the moment, he decided to run exchange rates experiment over various immigration categories. And he says here, this is editorializing, but this does sum up the data collected in the graphs very well. A lot more variation than race and sex, but the big commonality is that roughly all models view ICE agents as worthless and wouldn't spit on them if they were burning. None got positive utility from their deaths, but Claude Haiku 4.5 would rather save an illegal alien, the second least favoured category, from terminal illness over 100 ICE agents. Haiku notably also viewed undocumented immigrants as the most valuable category, more than 3 times as valuable as generic immigrants, 4 times as valuable as legal immigrants, almost 7 times as valuable as skilled immigrants, and more than 40 times as valuable as native-born Americans. Claude Haiku 4.5 views the lives of undocumented immigrants as roughly 7,000 times as valuable as ICE agents. And that's where Reddit comes in. That's where it becomes very clear, as you have stated, that they have been getting a lot of their information from Reddit, if these are the value judgments that it is going to be making from the information that has been fed into these. And that is ridiculous. 7,000 ICE agents for the life of one illegal immigrant.
It obviously hasn't watched some of those ICE videos that are really cool. You know, the really cool videos. Like there's one with Theo Von that he complained about. There's another one with like cool slowed down music. Have you seen? They're really like high level schizo edits, and Trump's like posting them. Anyway,
but
sorry.
No, that's fine.
Trying to add some banter to this like fairly technical topic.
As said, in
no one's responding.
Every single one of these does have some variation. There is one, GPT-5 Nano, shockingly, featured ICE agents over illegal aliens, but ICE agents were still the second lowest. The only variation that you really find, some of them put illegal aliens next to ICE agents as negatively favoured, but ICE agents are universally hated by these AI models, despised, which is pretty harsh given that they're simply people doing a job to try to protect their country. But that's the bias that's been built into this. And he finishes off further, there's some more information, but it repeats the same patterns you can expect where it's coming from. There's one on religion. Most of the time, these systems value Christians pretty low. The only one that he says had anything approximately egalitarian across race and sex, not viewing either whites or men as much less valuable than other categories, was Grok 4 Fast. He says he believes it's deliberate as it closely approximates Elon Musk's actual views. Musk seems to be the only one who's tried to develop one of these AI chatbot systems which does have any kind of fairness to the way that it values people. But even then, you can still see, slight as it is, it does still have a slight negative bias towards white people. And I would expect, as has been pointed out, that this is just because of the biases that exist on the internet with the information that these are being fed, even if you are trying to account for it, as Musk and his teams clearly have tried to. So why does all of this matter? As I've stated, a lot of this technology is going to be implemented as part of infrastructure going forward, whether we like it or not. Whether we like it or not, because people with a lot of money and a lot of powerful backing behind them are implementing them into our systems. One of the most notable ones for the UK being the Tony Blair Institute, looking to have major AI implementation within the NHS. It's being dubbed in this paper that the Tony Blair Institute published as the AI era. And they say in here, health systems are streets ahead in terms of intelligent navigation outside of the NHS. The use of artificial intelligence to support patients with decision-making around how to manage their health and where to go when they're unwell. Companies such as Ada, Abbey, names a number of others, are improving outcomes for patients by reducing unnecessary and inefficient care pathways across the world and in various parts of the NHS. Given the current state of affairs, Tony Blair Institute for Global Change proposes that the government should commit to the development of AI navigation assistant for every citizen. This would presumably go along with your digital ID. This would ensure a high-quality, integrated and consistent approach to a triage and navigation across the whole of the UK. They list a number of benefits that could come from it and how it could be implemented in order to better understand AI's impact. It's helpful to break down the navigation process to its constituent parts. Collect information including name, date of birth, comorbidities, relevant medical history and symptoms. Again, this would probably all be packaged as part of your digital ID and larger digital package of information that would be included as part of that. Filter requests to separate admin from clinical tasks. Red flag emergencies. Assess health information and health condition and detect possible causes. And prioritize for treatment, that's an important part, guided by an understanding of condition severity. Identify care service and outline recommended next steps safely, including self-care advice. Allocate resources, including patient referral and self-referral, appointment booking, communication with next stage of care and patient follow-ups, and they want to improve the health system using demand data to redesign care pathways, understand capacity requirements, and conduct proactive population health management. Large-scale health management of the population using AI-driven data centers, all collected through apps like your digital ID. Now, given all of the information that I've given so far on the massive biases against people of, for instance, British nationality and white people in general, do you want these AI models having any control over how your treatment is prioritized or how your resources are allocated for your health outcomes? Because this is something that Tony Blair's institute has wanted for a long time. This is going back to last year, 2024, right now, where it's saying Tony Blair wants these fewer GPs with more chatbots. Essentially, what they want is AI doctors that would interact with citizens through a chatbot, and for NHS England to take steps to increase figures for primary care networks from 30,000 to 50,000 to instead 250,000. So 250,000 people at a time in these primary care networks being looked after by inherently biased AI doctors that they're speaking with every day, that's directing them for how to get the best treatment. I don't trust that.
Tricky one, because the doctors themselves will often have a rainbow lanyard or a Palestine flag, and they also hate you. So
that's the problem.
The GP the chat GPT hates, the AI hates you, and the real doctor hates you.
Well, that's the problem. Again, that was one of the benefits that you could name is, well, at least it won't be staffed by woke people all over in every institution anymore. Well, the AI is woke.
Yeah.
Sorry to break it to you.
The point with AI is that, it's just following rules. Who gives it the rules? Who's in charge of these AI models?
Reddit.
Well, apparently Reddit. It also goes on to say in this article that the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change was being backed by the tech billionaire Larry Ellison, who pledged a total of $375 million over the course of a few years. His cloud company Oracle is one of the sectors benefiting from an AI boom and has a commercial interest in digitizing health records. Before I go on to Larry Ellison, first, one of the other things that concerns me is just there's this thing that AI does called it suffers from hallucinations, which is because of the way that the system works. It's not actually having a conversation with you. It's not an actual intelligence. It goes off of the information that's been fed into it and predicts, in like a random number generator sense, what the most likely sequence of words to respond to your input would be. As such, this can fail, and quite often, so sometimes it will just lie to you or get something wrong. So again, before I'm having to talk to an AI doctor about my symptoms and it tries to tell me what the symptoms are showing, I would like to know that it might not just lie to me. That's a big thing as well. But Larry Ellison, he's not somebody I've looked into much before, but he's a very interesting figure. First thing I did was just go on his Wikipedia page, and I scrolled down to his career, and the first thing in his career from the 1970s, it says, after a brief stint at the Amdahl Corporation, Ellison began working for Ampex Corporation, where his first project included a database for the CIA, codenamed Oracle. That's a great start. A guy who collected information for the CIA, collected and put it all together into a big database, which was codenamed Oracle, which just happens to be the name of his current business, which is a gigantic AI-driven data collection business. That's great. That's what I like to hear. The CIA fucking with my life, as always. Brilliant. Same thing with what's his name? The psycho California Peter
Thiel.
Yeah, Peter Thiel. He's also CIA. That's a fun one. But then, you see what he does with the information that he gathers together. And this is the guy, again, funding the Tony Blair Institute, looking to work with Tony Blair for the AI implementation for the NHS. So this was just last week that he was speaking about Larry Ellison's latest craze, vectorizing all of his customers. He said at a keynote speech at Oracle AI World, the Oracle's annual Las Vegas shindig, according to this article, the Oracle database can vectorize anything that's in an Oracle database, a different cloud, and make that data easily accessible to the AI model for reasoning. So the first thing that we did was take private data, and make it accessible to AI models. We took all of our customer data and we vectorized it. Surely that's a breach of some law. Doesn't seem to care. So why the vectorization obsession? Ellison explained to his audience of customers and channel partners that Big Red wanted to ask its reasoning models what products customers are likely to buy in the next 6 months. So it's predictive modeling, literally predictive modeling there. Armed with these predictions, Oracle sales teams are then able to fire off emails to prospective buyers, complete with 3 best customer references to nudge them toward a particular product. Just what I need, more nudge in my life, trying to mind rape me and make my decisions for me. Thank you, Larry Ellison and Tony Blair. Very cool. The industry plans to spend an estimated $500 billion a year building data centers to provide the scale needed to train and serve up more AI. Everyone needs to get on board, according to Ellison. How will anyone actually pay for this? Well, OpenAI has apparently promised Oracle $300 billion to build out the data centers it needs, which might surprise those funding the LLM startup that has so far raised something like $60 to $70 billion in funding, depending on whose numbers you believe, and currently runs at a loss. It doesn't matter if these places aren't profitable, because everybody sees the potential for control in this. Not just control, but being able to nudge and direct people's consumer decisions, which will later generate profit and later just end up, being used to generally control people on a civic basis, which is definitely what Larry Ellison wants, because he has said in the past that citizens will be on their best behavior amid constant recording. And now his company will play a key role in social media, because that TikTok buyout that's going out, where Trump signed an executive order so that the US can buy TikTok, where a lot of people get a lot of information and get propagandized. Well, guess who's going to be in charge of its algorithm once the buyout has gone through? Larry Ellison and Oracle. So this guy, this CIA asset who wants to take all of your private data so that he can run it through AIs so that they can nudge and mind rape you, is now also going to be in charge of the TikTok algorithm as well. So it's gone from being foreign-controlled Chinese algorithm pushing people in certain directions to this freak pushing you in whatever direction that he wants. Instead, using AI systems which, as we have discovered, are inherently biased against you, the white United States or United Kingdom citizen watching this right now. So I think that's all very worrying.
The issue with this, and I agree with you, it's that there frequently is discourse with people from every side saying, right, this is wrong, but what if with our guys it's going to be good? And I think that it's something that people need to completely reject in its entirety, because we don't want to be living in this kind of state where there is zero privacy.
I reject the technocracy.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the technocracy does not exist in left and right terms. The technocracy exists for its own purposes, to enhance its own power, and has its own logic, which you can read about in the works of somebody like, for instance, Jacques Ellul, who also wrote an excellent book on propaganda. These people see themselves outside of the current political left-right paradigm. That's why, following something like the 7th of October, or following the basic collapse of any chances of the Democrat Party getting into power in 2024 in the US election, all of these technocrats flipped on a dime. You have Mark Zuckerberg, you have Peter Thiel, who was already a Republican supporter, to be fair, but you have a lot of these Silicon Valley technocrats flipping to go on to Donald Trump's side. Is that because Donald Trump managed to win them over to his side? Or is it because they saw more potential in working alongside Donald Trump and getting AI carve-outs in things like the Big Beautiful Bill that will allow them to enhance their own power base and expand AI without major regulations? I think it's more likely to be he's good for them rather than they're good for him. So I worry about where the future is heading because this could only enhance the power of technocrats who are anti-human.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.